My perspective on this is not unique and not novel. It's entirely uninteresting. It is, in fact, the most obvious thing that one could say about this, but it needs to be said anyway. J.K. Rowling endorses transphobic documentary by alt-right commentator Matt Walsh. Appreciate Daily Dot referring to him as alt-right. He probably is, yeah. From J.K. Rowling quote-tweeting Matt Walsh, thus signal-boosting the obsessive fascist, who literally has fascist in his Twitter bio, and has talked about the need for men and women to occupy different roles. Endless death and rape threats, threats of loss of livelihood, employers targeted, physical harassment, family address posted online with pictures of bomb-making manuals aren't mean comments. If you don't yet understand what happens to women to stand up in this issue, back off. In response to Matt Walsh saying people get harassment for being transphobic or whatever. Matt Walsh says that he praises J.K. Rowling, and J.K. Rowling responds by saying, "And your film did a good job exposing the incoherence of gender identity theory and some of the harm it's done." Blah, 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 blah. So why is this significant? Well, first of all, it means I was right, you stupid fucking idiots. You pieces of shit. I was right. I was always right. You were all, Vosh, you shouldn't engage in ironic sexism when engaging with TERFs because they're very concerned about sexism, and it will only bolster them if you do sexism. Well, what the fuck now, lads? Huh? Matt Walsh is about as open of an anti-feminist as you can get outside of fucking Klan meetings. What now? Huh? They don't care. They're transphobes first and everything else second, okay? You can be as sexist as you want. If you're transphobic, they'll go along with it. And personally, and I maintain this, being able to laugh at casual sexism is a critical weapon against people like J.K. Rowling, whose fan bases right now, by the way, are conservative. Look at people replying to J.K. Rowling, signal-boosting J.K. Rowling, quote-tweeting J.K. Rowling positively. These aren't a bunch of well-meaning feminists who have been roped along by TERF ideology. They're 90% conservatives. They're not feminists. But the casual, joking ability to engage in derisive language, and by this I mean casual, problematic humor of any kind, I've always considered to be an effective weapon against conservatism. Because what's the first thing they throw at us, right? You know? Oh, when they're bigoted, they're joking. We just can't handle jokes, you know? Conservatives love problematic humor because they see it as a representation of their legitimate bigotry. They like it because it's a shadow expression of their beliefs. And for that reason, the ability to weaponize humor like that towards positive ends has always been a really effective tactic against them. One of the big reasons why, how many times have you seen conservatives die on the Hill that George Carlin is a big woke asshole? A lot of historical figures, I don't know if he's a historical figure, but a lot of people in the recent past have been decried by conservatives as actually bad. Have they gone after George Carlin? No. Because going after somebody that irreverent, somebody that obviously willing to take and make a joke, is really difficult. Really, really, really tough. Do you remember when I was talking with Alex Stein, the guy who just a couple days ago sexually harassed AOC? You remember when I made a joke comparing him to people who defend the Holocaust? And immediately, and I love doing this, by the way, because he's of two worlds. First of all, boy's definitely some kind of crypto. Second, he has to maintain a veneer of professionalism. I don't. So I make a joke relating him to a Holocaust denier. And he's like, whoa, you can't do that. You can't do that. You can't make jokes about the Holocaust. And I was like, whoa, I just like edgy, irreverent humor. Ricky Gervais is my favorite guy. You remember that? Please tell me you guys remember that bit from the debate. What'd he do after that? What'd he do? He backed the fuck off. He immediately backed off, moment after, immediately. Because to the right, the idea that the crazy left won't let us make jokes has been the delivery mechanism for years of bigotry. It has been like the forefront culture war tactic of conservatives to throw that forward. So if you demonstrate that you're capable of engaging in that behavior, you throw off a large portion of their ability to do anything to you. Sometimes they cry and they whinge about it, you know, they'll pretend that they're offended by your commentary anyway, but usually sticking to your guns puts the audience of that public figure in a difficult position. Because a lot of them don't think that you should get hysterical over little jokes like that. And I gotta say, folks, conservatives are kind of split on J.K. Rowling when she acts like that. Because on one hand, conservatives hate trans people. They want you shot in the back of the head. But on the other hand, what is J.K. Rowling but a triggered SJW when she gets offended by women get in the kitchen jokes? Is she not? What differentiates her from all of the whingy, blue-haired feminists on YouTube that were made fun of by the skeptics for years? Very little outside the agreeing on trans people being subhuman. It puts the conservatives in a difficult position, which is why it is fucking critical that people on the left be more edgy. Drive those wedges. Just because J.K. Rowling doesn't like ironic sexism doesn't mean the conservatives who follow her don't. Drive it home. Because, guys, when J.K. Rowling is jerking off here with Matt Walsh, a fascist, who calls himself a fascist, who is unapologetic in every conservative belief that he holds, who is anti-feminist in every conceivable way, you really think that the switch on what determines whether J.K. Rowling and her followers are going to turn on you is whether or not you're sufficiently feminist? Ridiculous. Here's a question. If J.K. Rowling's followers are just a bunch of well-meaning feminists who have been deluded by TERF ideology, why the fuck do they not seem to care that much that she's palling around with one of the most aggressive advocates for anti-feminism and chauvinistic patriarchy? It's almost like the people who follow J.K. Rowling and signal boost her are largely conservatives these days. You get why I'm harping on about this, don't you? The ability to be more edgy and more irreverent than conservatives are comfortable pretending they want to be is a very important defense mechanism. It's shitposting power. It's a core element of advancing the political will of our group, because nothing makes us look more crazy and more separate and more unfun and more bitchy or whatever, than dogpiling each other over perceived violations of wokeness that would have made Y7 children's cartoons. They're arguing now, though. Yeah, look, respectfully, and I mean respectfully, you need to fall back and support men like Matt Walsh. You're not built for this conflict. This is being said to J.K. Rowling here. The failure and cowardice of men got us into this mess. Matt is standing up. You need to support him. Men have to fix this. It's a great line here. And by the way, I want you to think for a second. What exactly is prompting the disagreement that is about to happen? If not an exposure of the ideological divide between true conservatives and transphobes who are useful idiots to conservatives. Like, think. Is there not a wedge being driven here? In this case, the wedge is being driven by this guy's, phenomenal brain. So he's doing the work for us here. But imagine leftists capable of drawing attention to this ideological conflict without them even needing to be stupid. Do you understand what I'm getting at? I hope I'm demonstrating this point effectively. I don't want it to come across solely as me bragging that I'm right. Me being right is an epistemic given. I think it's important to understand that this alliance is never as solid as it seems. Or I'll put it another way. If you want this whole J.K. Rowling conservative house of cards to fall apart, it's not going to happen with well-meaning feminist appeals to J.K. Rowling. It's going to happen when you say things to J.K. Rowling that irritate her and a portion of her fan base, but excite the conservatives that are following her because she's a useful idiot. That's the critical point right there. And doing that without exacerbating reactionary tendencies yourself, that's the key. So I will own up to whatever reactionary tendencies I demonstrated with my women shut up joke, you know. The the Scarlet Letter, Handmaid's Tale world I brought us in with my Y7 problematic comedy. But anyway, let's see what happens when that divide is made manifest. Respectfully, I've been facing down the punch and kill TERFs brigade for a while now, and not once have I thought what I really want is to hand over to a man who thinks feminism is one of the worst things to happen to Western civilization. Like many women on the left, I despair that so many self-proclaimed liberals turn a blind eye to the naked misogyny of the gender identity movement and the threat it posed about red girls. Walsh's film undeniably exposed what many leftists are too scared to, but share a similar belief that women exist biological class, does not an ally make. I believe women are susceptible to certain harms and have specific needs that feminism necessary to protect rights. Walsh believes feminism is rotten, and his default appears to be denigrating women with whom he disagrees. He's no more on my side than the shut up or we'll bomb you charmers who cloak their misogyny in a pretty pink and blue flag. Every tweet thread from J.K. Rowling that looks like this is a victory for the left. J.K. Rowling's popularity right now is delivered almost entirely by the conservative momentum behind her transphobia. But I don't believe J.K. Rowling is an unabashed fascist. I think that she's a transphobe above everything else. I think she'll just go along with transphobia no matter where it takes her. Of course, that will mean that she will be an ally to fascists. So the more time she spends arguing with the fascists, why do you think she's a transphobe? Serious question. Most TERFs, most women TERFs at least, seem to be transphobes or TERFs or whatever because they were assaulted or raped by a man earlier in life. They transferred those feelings onto a broad hatred of men as a physiological thing. And they see trans women as like a vessel of invasion, like a Trojan horse, essentially. You might note this gives me exactly zero sympathy for them. I think it's perfectly acceptable to make fun of man-hating disguised as feminism, even when trans people are not involved. I don't care why it is. Trauma is not an excuse to engage in any of this behavior. I don't care. I will be shockingly blasé. You know, oh, but don't you know the reason why I'm supporting bigotry against a minority group while the plans for a genocide against them are being established is because I was a victim in my life. Oh, cool, that's great. Well, hopefully revolutionary action doesn't make you a victim twice, friendo. Are there any other good stress points to hit for other alliances on the right? I really do think that the ability to just be irreverent and funny is so important for leftists. It's not that hard to do either. We're not really talking about like crazy super ultra bigoted slur wielding whatever, you know. Just a very basic level of irreverence will get you through a lot of this. What the fuck is Pigeon screaming about? It's like saying you support segregation in America as a woman because you were raped by a black guy or something. Yeah, you know. What does irreverence mean? Affecting a lack of care for what's happening. Are edgy jokes okay? Look, I've said this 1,000 times before, and I'll say it again. One of the main reasons that people seem to more easily slip into far-right communities, it's that far-left communities are self-serious, ivory tower, circle jerks full of people who gatekeep relentlessly and wouldn't know how to have fun if they, if it killed them. And right-leaning communities are anarchic and humor-centric. Now, obviously, the humor is usually repetitive and unfunny and a vehicle for bigotry, but when you're just getting into it, the fact that they're not like the former group is enough. Yeah, lefties are tremendous killjoys.